So, here we go. We are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Ask Me Anything from the Asato Dojo. My name is James Pankiewicz, and I'm joined this month by Ulf Karlsson Sensei. Sensei, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's been a beautiful day here in Okinawa, and a very cool thing I noticed on the way over here, there was a big sumo contest happening just around the corner. So it's really good to see, this is Okinawan sumo, by the way, and it's really, really good to see that these live events have come back. There was actually at the Makeshi Ugan, which is, for those of you that may have been here, is a very small park on the corner of Kokusai Dori and the Makeshi Station Street. And there's a championship there once a year. 2 weeks ago, there was a championship in Naminue at the shrine there, overlooking the beach. And they, if you know anything about Okinawa sumo, you know that it's actually done on sand. So yeah, very, very cool. I have had the opportunity myself to give it a try a few times, and always enjoyed it. And it's been hugely informative experience on my karate. And the crossover, the overlap, is that tonight after this session, from 8 p.m., we'll be doing a seminar here looking at Chatanyara Kushanku, which I think has lots and lots of wrestling and sumo type techniques in it. So yeah, it's kind of timely. Ulf Sensei, you are in a beautiful location.
Yeah. I'm just sitting in my brother's outdoor space here. So, but it's a beautiful day here in Sweden.
Yeah, looks lovely.
It's totally okay.
Looks lovely. So summertime, definitely the best time to visit Sweden then.
Yes, I think so, especially for first visitors.
Good.
Especially at our location, I'm located on the west coast.
Right.
Halfway between Gothenburg and the Norwegian border. So it's a lovely spot in the summertime.
Lovely. You're a frequent visitor to Okinawa. That's how we met initially. And I've become an avid student of your teaching, particularly around Kishimoto-Di, which is what we will be talking a lot about today. And I know a lot of people are interested in that. I've received quite a lot of messages from people saying, what is it? You know, because a lot of people haven't heard of it as a school of karate or a school of Ryukyu martial arts. But before we go there, I just want to kind of let everybody know the rules, so to speak, which is that please send us your messages. If you're watching this on the YouTube live stream, there's a chat function there, and we would be very, very keen to hear from you. If you want to say hi, just say hi to us on the chat function. Just give us a little comment there. That's great. And if you'd like to give us some comments or some questions, we will do our best to respond to those during this live session. It's an Ask Me Anything, so you know we'll do our best. If it comes to Okinawa and karate, we've got a slightly better chance, slightly better than average chance, but we'll see how we do. Also, I want to let people know kind of an exciting piece of news. Again, as some of you may know, I organize an event every year called the 100 Kata Challenge, which is the 100, at the full title, the 100 karate kata for 100 kata for Karate Day Challenge. I can't get it right myself. October the 25th is Karate Day, and it's a day when we celebrate when karate was named, so to speak, when the teachers here of the time agreed to use karate as the term to talk about their martial arts heritage. And so that's now Karate Day. We celebrate it here in Okinawa. The 100 Kata Challenge is a way to extend that celebration across the world. And so every Karate Day, we now have many, many people around the world who will come together and take the challenge of doing 100 kata in sequence, kind of a mini karate kata marathon. But it's very, very enjoyable, and it really brings people together. This year, we will be doing it here in Okinawa inside Shurijo grounds. So finally, for the first time, we will be at Shurijo Castle, or rather Shuri Castle, and doing our 100 kata there on October the 25th. We'll be doing it in the early evening time, local time, and we will be also extending the invitation to everybody around the world to join us on the same day, at the same time if you can, but it doesn't have to be. We will be live streaming and sharing our 100 kata challenge from Shuri Castle, and we will invite you to do the same from wherever you are. So that's very exciting news for me. We've never got to Shuri Castle before to do this, so this is going to be fun. October the 25th. More details coming online. We'll give you also where you can register, and there will be t-shirts and certificates and all that good stuff too that everybody likes to have as well. Okay, our first arrival, Gregorz. Greetings from Gdansk, Poland. Greetings to you. Nice to see you, Gregorz. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so let me kick off by asking you a couple of questions, Ulf Sensei, if that's good. So let's start with the basics. How did you start with your martial arts training? What was it that drew you to martial arts in the first place?
Well, I almost don't remember. I think it was curiosity, but what I realized is that I started in the end of August, beginning of September, 40 years ago, this autumn. So we'll have some kind of 40-year anniversary camp here. So I started with a little known karate style called Kenbukai. And a year later, I started doing a martial art called Taido. And Taido is somewhat newer, from 1965, but it's made from an Okinawan master called Seiken Shukimine. And we started researching the history more, and the teacher of Shukimine Sensei is called Kishimoto-Di. And he had two known students who taught the material after war, and one was Shukimine Seiken Sensei, and the other was Asato Sensei. So from 2009, I've been studying at a dojo in Naha on Okinawa called Buikan, which is located in Gibocho, Shuri. So Higa Seitoku trained for Kishimoto-Di during the 30s, 1932 to 1937. And after the war, he returned to Okinawa about 1949 and started dojo in 1951, which was later renamed Buikan. He sadly passed away in 2006, but his son, Higa Kiyohiko Sensei, is still teaching. So my main sensei on Okinawa is Higa Kiyohiko Sensei, who still to this day teach. So those are the two main known lines for teaching material from Kishimoto-Di. So I train in both lines, and we realized that no one taught only the material from Kishimoto-Di, which is quite small. So to not have that die out, so we decided to teach that material in a small package we call Kishimoto-Di, and that's kind of the outer rims of what we teach. It's a quite small material. It's based on 4 kata principles and 2 mandrills, and some, of course, some one person training as well. But it's still if we compare with most other karate ryuha, it's quite a small material, because it consists of mainly 4 kata, which is quite famous Nahanshi, Pasai, and Kushanku, which is a usual combination. They were mentioned first time together, I think, in 1896 in an article. So they've been together for quite a long time. And besides these 3 classical kata, we also have one which we could call a helping kata, which melds these 3 together, which is called Nidambu. So 4 kata is kata-wise the whole system. And then sometimes I feel it's a little too much, but compared with many others, it's still a small package.
Well, it's really interesting because we hear about, if you read that your karate history, you frequently will see reference to, when people learned in the old days, they went and learned one form or one skill from a teacher, and then they would go to another teacher to learn another skill or another form, and so this very sort of narrow focus on a particular set of skills or even just a particular form was the way that knowledge was transmitted. The large school format is very much a very modern format, really, isn't it? I mean, this is something that only starts to happen in the early 20th century, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at, for instance, the Okinawan school system, where we have there was a lot of famous teacher teaching, but Itosu Anko might be the most famous, and then you have Hanashiro Shomo, and you have Yabu Kensu, and so on. And according to some sources, which Kinyo Hiroki writes about in his book, From Tode to Karate, there he talks about it being 14 official school kata, which is the Pinan and the Hanshi and the 2 Pasai and 2 Kushanku, Goryu Shiho, and Shinto. And it might be some snowballing along the kata line where some system picks up quite many kata since then. So it's hard to say, but for instance, if you take a person like Motobu Shoki, he was kind of famous for one kata, Nahanshi. He obviously knew more, but he started everyone on Nahanshi, and if there was interest, he will also teach, for instance, Pasai or Seisan, but he still had quite a small material. And then other famous people is like Kian Shotoku, which basically pick up one kata per teacher almost, and not totally true, but not that many kata. So you're right, probably there was not that many kata per teacher before 1900. It's been assembled and put into systems, so to speak. So that's kind of what makes a karate special. What kind of techniques, what kind of kata, what kind of drills and principles are a mess, because I don't think there's any special unique technique. Usually it's more how is the system created. That's what makes it unique.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, so it is the truth. I think it's the case that a lot of schools might be hard pressed to be able to communicate the principles or the characteristics of their karate, for example, these days, because so much has become shared. There's been so much fusion and sort of sharing of ideas in the modern age, cross-fertilization, etc. But one of the things that I think seems quite clear is that Kishimoto-Di has a very clear set of movement principles and fighting strategies.
Yes, and actually that was one of the things that appealed to me and probably to more people, is that the close connection between how we train the kata, the principle we taught, and how to use it. So it feels very, it's quite an easy to understand system. I don't say it's always easy to train. I mean, we try to have the training hard so it will be easy to do the application, but just because it's easy to understand, it still takes training to get good.
Of course,
and I mean, you don't have to look any further than, for instance, boxing. It's not that many basic techniques, but it takes still a lot of training to get good at it.
Absolutely.
So, but I agree with you. It's kind of, it's easy to pick up the IDs and so on, because it's quite clear cut that this teach this and this is this. So it's easy to understand. And sometimes it might be more difficult than other systems. I don't say it always that way. I think like Ueshiri always struck me like quite close between how they train and how they apply it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Well, I think it's very interesting. As I said earlier on in the beginning here, I said that we'll be taking a look at following this session when we do our live seminar session from 8 p.m. local time here. Tonight, theme is Chatanyara Kushanku, an old kata, right? Yes. One of the older katas, yes, and I think it would be fair to say that the older the kata, perhaps the less clarity we generally have about the interpretation of it, but certainly the initial sort of underpinning kind of, how can I say, the why of the kata.
Yes.
Where did it come from and why? Why was it created? For what purpose? Right? The underlying intention of the kata. And I think, because these kata, if these kata go back 8 or 10 generations, as Kushanku does, as Seisan does, Pasai maybe slightly younger, not much, but Naihanchi too probably goes back at least 10 generations of practice or more. How can we know? How can we know what the original intention was, particularly if it wasn't written down? It's a challenge. However, I do think that you have one of the best preserved and most direct connections back down through the history of the material that you do.
Well, in a way, you can say it, usually, I mean, both Fika's Seitoku Sensei and Kishimoto and Shukumine Seiken were quite young when they learned material, as were Kishimoto Soko, probably. So not that many generations, and you also have that kind of blessing in disguise that it's so small material, so it's more focused on how to use it.
Yeah.
But if you go back to your discussion about Kushanku is an interesting kata because, I mean, it's hard to prove anything beyond the 30s. We know it was trained in 1879, but I mean, it's hard to establish exactly how did it look if we go beyond 1900 years, because there's so many variations on how it was taught back then. But I would say there are 4 or 5 variations of Kushanku that's quite old. You have the Itosu Kushanku, you have the Itosu Kushanku Sho. There's 2. Probably Kushanku Sho is done in the 1900s, but it's still maybe 120 years old. And then probably Chatanyara is even older, and also you have Shibana Kushanku, which is related to the Otosu version, but might be slightly older. And then you have the Kushanku we do, which we call Tachimura Kushanku, because according to Higa Seitoku Sensei, the teacher of Kishimoto was a man called Tachimura, which we present more about during the seminars. But he probably was working as a taxman basically until 1879, and then retired up to Nago and taught during the 1880s somewhere to Kishimoto. So it's pretty far back already there. And there we're talking basically 2-3 generations.
Yes.
That's like Kishimoto, Shugumine, and we who train today. So that's 4 old versions. And there are probably a few more old Kushankus, but that's 4 at least.
Yeah.
And they're all quite similar, which also speaks for a common ancestor. So if you put them up, you in one hand have Chatanyara, on the other hand you have the Itosu, and then you have the Shibana, then you have the Tachimura, and it comes back to Chatanyara. So they're not totally different. They're quite similar.
Yes.
Probably they drift in different direction during the centuries almost, but at least decennium. And
Well,
there is this story about it coming from a person called Kushanku, who was on Okinawa in 55 to 56 on a tribute. We don't know if it's true. It might be true. And also, I mean, I don't think there's any technical connection, but we had one in the Tachimura family working with that Saposhi, actually, receiving a thank you note from the royal viceroy or from the Chinese. So historically, there is some interesting connections.
Yeah.
But technically, it would be going a bridge too far to state there is a lineage back. Yeah. So it's a lot of I wouldn't say guesswork, but a lot of theories about how is it connected backwards. But still, I would say that Kushanku is quite an old kata, and at least have been taught more openly since 1879, when Okinawa went from being a kingdom to being a prefecture in Japan.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the Tachimura Kushanku is probably the one which people are least aware of, I suspect. It's definitely because it. Well, recently I think one or two it started to creep into some competitions somewhere, but not really, not the way that you do it.
Well, here we can talk about how things can change quite rapidly, and Shukumine was during the 50s and 60s teaching Kishimoto, and they kind of made some design choices when they presented in Genseri, and quite lately one of the students of Shukumine Sensei, Tosa, presented the Kishimoto Kushanku, which is now part in the kata competition world. So it went through some design changes when this was including Genseri, and then some design changes by Tosa, who came from Shotokan originally. Yeah. And then the competition people have put it through some shituri as well. So actually, I don't think it's almost recognizable anymore. But I wager to say that's basically what happened to the Shibana Kushanku and Shatanya Kushanku as well. And to be honest, it's not a problem. It looks different when they compete with it. It's just when people think it's the way they did it 200 years ago, which
indeed, yeah,
which was not how they did it 3 years ago or 20 years ago. So it kind of took on its own life, and
I think you have to be very careful. Very careful. Yeah. I think you have to be very careful when you're watching traditional karate competitions, right?
I mean, in a way, it's interesting to see how big differences could be. I don't really speak about if you step left instead of right or back instead of front. I mean, that's design decision. Yeah. But when they change everything from stances to to what techniques they use to, it is. But it's interesting to see. So I think you have to be aware that a tradition can die out inside one generation if you're not careful.
Yes.
And it is. I mean, yes. I mean, I think Shatanyara, for instance, because we talk about it, it's a really nice form of Kushanku. And I think that, for instance, the Matsubayashi has to be careful of safeguarding it, because if I take Matsubayashi as an example here, they have their Kushanku from one lineage, and then they have Pinan kata from another lineage.
Yep.
So the material is somewhat different.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and because people do Pinan before they do Kushanku, they can pick up certain traits which would change the Kushanku. And I don't say it has to be a problem, but it can easily become one.
No, that's a very, very valid point. Yes, you can, if you think, it's very easy to think that what you're doing when you're doing the Pinan kata is learning sort of the mini versions of Kushanku. And then,
Yes.
then you sort of put those together and you can kind of do Kushanku. And yeah, okay, to a certain extent, but also, as you say, you lose a lot of the, I think the understanding of the older body dynamics.
Yes. Yes.
And the older strategy, fighting strategy.
Yes. Yeah.
But
okay,
yeah,
we shouldn't talk that much about masturbation today. But what I mean is, I think changes happen inside every generation. But the question is it intended or not? And one way forward is actually that people kind of put it into text and video, that these changes are done to, for instance, to make it better because of. And you can see that there's several quite modern karate that tries to cherry pick what they think is best. And those are intentional changes. But then you also have the people forget and invent in the moment things when the kata changes and things changes because they forgot how to learn it. And that might be a bigger problem the more material you know. I don't know.
That's a very, very valid point. I mean, you've spent a lot of time in Okinawa, and you spent a lot of time. You speak Japanese. You had a long association with the country, and you. I think you have a very good relationship with your teachers and your seniors here. I've striven to do the same thing, and that's a fantastic, a very worthwhile investment. But also means that you get to realize that they're not perfect. Things change, things get forgotten along the way. Everybody's human. The tradition, the great thing about having lots of people that practice as tradition is that if somebody does forget, change something, there's more of a chance that somebody else is going to go, no, we used to do it that way. And there's a sort of a correction, maybe, right? But so there's no doubt that things change along the way.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't have to be bad. It's just to be aware of it. And also, I mean, if you come high up enough in the world to do Kushanku, I mean, usually you have a few katas before that.
Sure.
In a way, I would say probably Kushanku would be more personalized than, for instance, as a kata as Nahanshi.
Yeah.
And you will see some kind of span where you find variations, which is considered okay. But okay, that's maybe another thing. But it's like you said that I feel quite lucky to have good instructors and also elders in the dojo to adhere to. And I would say that maybe where I train today, Buikan in Naha is maybe not a dojo for everyone, but I had a really, really nice time every time I visit.
Yeah.
And I learned lots. Probably Higa Sensei forgot more than I ever learned. So just trying to pick up the most basic things, and also they teach other things like Kanashiro Shomo karate, which I don't do. They also teach a lot of Kobudo, which I don't do. So they teach quite much material, and I try to make the Kishimoto-Di material. That's what I teach because I wanted to survive another generation, and I might explain the word as well, the Kishimoto-Di, because it's quite a descriptive word. With D or Te, as it's called in Japanese. And then it's same sound from T to D when you put something before. But the D itself, hand, it's both kind of a very generic word for skill, which is not strange because you have handicrafts. So it's kind of all over the world, I think, that the hand symbolizes handicraft.
Yeah.
But it also in the Japanese, or especially in Okinawan context, also mean martial arts. So Kishimoto-Di basically mean the martial arts or the martial arts skills from Kishimoto-Di, from Kishimoto Soko Sensei. So it's a very descriptive name, Kishimoto-Di, and it's kind of maybe not limited, but it has a quite clear edge, which is these principles, is these katas, is these drills, which makes a small system.
Yeah.
And there's good things and bad things about small systems. And the thing is, both Kishimoto and probably all back then, I would say Shukumin and Higa Sensei, all of these mainly trained for about 4 to 5 years, basically daily. So if you count in once or twice a day for 5 years, it's quite many hours.
Yeah.
But the point is that the system can be taught and trained. I mean, you can train more afterwards, but you pick up the whole system roughly 4 to 5 years if you do your diligence.
Yes.
You can always spread it out over time, but my point being that it's quite a compact system.
Well, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because that's also is a bit of a myth buster in a way, because you do get a lot of people who subscribe to the view, oh, you need to study for a long, long time, to really master a system. And
well, again, you might need more time to train it. I don't say. Some people.
But it was
say
interesting.
Like that. Yeah.
Well, as I was saying, interesting. In the old days, often these guys that we regard as the masters, they were training at a very young age as well. They were basically teenagers when they were learning this, so they were soaking it in. Yeah. They were training twice a day. They could physically do it. It was very intensive, and then they would go off and they would teach it, or they would use it, or they would do something with it. So, quite. I mean, it's very much like doing an intensive train. Like you go to university or to a technical college. You do an intensive training 4 or 5 years in a deep subject, and you come out with a level of competency. Competency, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because that's kind of the thing that, I mean, probably back when it was a kingdom, they had a passage of rites or becoming a man, which they call at 14. But the thing is, they had used the old Chinese way of counting age, which means that you're 1 when you're born. Right. So if you're born in December, you actually turn 2 in January.
Right.
So, so most people probably started training when they were 13 or 12, but say 30, and they trained for about 5 years until 17, because probably they were kicked out and started to work at 18. I mean, so we're not 100% sure about that, but it's quite likely that was the case. And then you have other ways of training as well, but probably it was quite more, I mean, once or twice a day for 4 to 5 years. And then you have the system. And after that, it depends on what kind of work and what kind of interest you have. If you worked as a guard, you're probably more interested in training, or a policeman or whatever. Exactly. And people's doing other things might tone it down and just maintain the knowledge. I think, again, you might need like 10,000 hours or 10 years of training to become really good. I mean, it's also depending on how is your physical level when you start.
That's true. Yeah.
But I would still say you can, I mean, kata you can pick up earlier, but if you want to pick up the whole system, I would say, I mean, generally 4 to 5 years, maybe a few can do it faster, and anyone might take longer time, but 4 to 5 years, I think, is reasonable. And I think many systems today, people train 2 or 3 times a week, and they have like a grade every term, and they just go through the motions to rise in the grade. So it might be a different way of thinking.
Yes. I do think, though, that Kishimoto-Di presents an unusual opportunity for martial artists. I've seen and trained in many styles along the way. Here in Okinawa, my mainstay has been Matsubashi-ryu, for many reasons. The main one, to be honest, is I have a really great relationship with my teacher, but I do feel lucky that I've sort of landed in a style which I find very interesting too. But I've touched on a lot of different systems along the way, and I will say that I think that study of Kishimoto-Di, I think, will add value and will upskill, I think, anybody that already has a basis in empty-handed martial arts. So
Well,
I do think as a sort of an add-on to what you already know, I think it's a really, really great opportunity.
Well, probably other people would be better equipped to answer that, but I think it could serve as an example. I mean, if they see it as a parallel development line and you look at it and you see how are we constructed for our training? I mean, how do we present the principles and how does it influence the kata and the two-man application and how we train, and both our strategy and our tactics, and also how is the whole system organized can help others to understand their system better. So there's a saying that see one, understand 10, and sometimes it can help to see another example, like, okay, that's why. But I don't try to teach other how their system works because I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know. So I don't teach other people what applications are in their kata because I don't know. But I can show what our is. This is how it looks. This is how we train it. This is the theory. And this is how it's all connected. Does it make sense to you? Does it apply to you? I don't know. That's up to the person who tries it. So yeah, because I have people coming from karate, I have people coming from Taido or other martial arts, or people are totally new to martial arts. Yeah. So they all have their own take on things. And again, people come from other regions is welcome to try it out and see what I think.
Absolutely.
Because,
absolutely. So let's talk about the opportunity then. So you're based in Sweden, clearly, but you're coming back to Okinawa early November and planning to be here in Okinawa through November, December, and into January. And during that time, there will be opportunities for people to train with you. The first one will be an open seminar on November the 5th here at the Asato Dojo, and followed by a program of classes, weekly classes, running through November and December, and then culminating in a 2-day seminar in the last week of December, which will be part of a 4-day event here, and we'll have an additional 2 days of instruction as well. So
or the Toshikoshi,
Toshikoshi Keiko, the end. Well, it's a great time. It's a great time to be here at the end of the year. You have the Toshikoshi Keiko, you have the festivities, the New Year's festivities, which are always fun to do in Japan. But yes, zooming back, November 5th, first week of November. Actually, it's the week following Karate Day. So
if anyone's still
time to be here,
now they're welcome to join in.
Exactly. Yes. November the 5th. We've got some information up on the asatodojo.com website. And we will be adding more information there too. But perhaps you could just talk a little bit about what you'll be presenting there in that first seminar.
Okay, so the natural starting point for the material I teach is Nahanshi, because it contains a lot of the basics, everything from what we call shikodachi, basic techniques like low sweeping arm and whatever. So we usually always start with Nahanshi. So Nahanshi and 3 basic principle is like, we have more principles, but the 3 basic we start with teaching is the Isun Hasureru, which is a void by an inch. So when we attack or counter, we move close to the opponent's attacking appendixes, usually our arm, but could be a leg as well. And the next one is kobo itai, which is an old saying in Japanese martial arts, which is attack and defense at the same time. So we try to have both defense and offense at the same time, simultaneously. And it could be avoidance, or it could be that one arm counters and one arm receives the attack. There are several variations of it. And the third main principle for the physical part is called taigi ichi or taigi itai, which means that the body and the technique are done simultaneously. And that's both for power generation, so you have body mass into your technique, but also technical things. So we don't step first, get into reach of the opponent, and then deliver the technique. So we want the technique. Basically, the body should never have to wait for the arms. So you can always move. That's kind of the idea. So you could say from the encounter starts to it ends, it's like pouring out water or a bucket. It just flows.
Right. Interesting.
And of course, like math, it's not enough with the principles. You also have to have some examples to count by. So we will do, depending on what time we have, but about 40 to 50 examples, or if you want to call it applications. Sometimes examples are more to teach the principle than the absolutely best application. So about 40, maybe more if we have the time, because it's just a one-day seminar. So the main idea is to get people to understand what we try to teach. And therefore, we need to present all these parts: principles, the kata, two-man application, and some one-man training. And of course, this will be continued during the subsequent training. And to go to the 2-day options, we will kind of finish up the Nahanshi and introduce Kushanku, so they can see the last part, because we teach in the order of Nahanshi, Nidanbu, and then either Pasai or Kushanku. That's not so important, the order, but traditionally Pasai comes before. So Kushanku is the last one which was taught traditionally. Today, it doesn't really matter. So we will go from the front to the end. It's kind of a Zen thing. We do the full circle. So you see how connected Nahanshi and Kushanku really are, but also to give you an impression from, I don't know if you agree, but Nahanshi is kind of our stiff and angular thing, while Kushanku is the smooth, silky thing. So that's the reason.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, Nahanshi usually is done with this sort of very strong, solid kind of approach to it, and Kushanku appears to be a lot lighter, more acrobatic, right? So actually, but the same in Matsubashi Ryu. I think we can actually, when we peer into it, we can see a very deep connection between Nahanshi and
so for instance, Nahanshi, you have like clear cut, like 90 degrees angle, 45-degree angles and so on, by angling. And then when you come Kushanku, it's a more smooth circular motion.
Yes. Yeah, things get smoother and flow more, and everything leads from the body. With Kushanku, that's my feeling too. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
And that's kind of the reason why I go all the way from Nahanshi to Kushanku. Is just because you can't teach the whole system anyway in 2 days, but you can give kind of feeling what it contains.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think there's going to be a lot of excellent content there. And we will be putting together a little package to help people that want to come over and train. So if people want to come and even for the whole 2 months, 2.5 months,
Yeah.
or 2 months, then we will work with people to make that as affordable as possible. I think it's a fantastic time. I've always thought since I started living here that October, November, December are the best time to be here as a martial artist. There's so much going on. It's a cooler time of the year, so it's easier to train. Great time of the year.
Yeah, even if I don't live in Okinawa, I can say that I haven't been all months in Okinawa yet, but it's because I kind of elected to try to be there November, December.
Yeah.
And one reason is November is kind of the most boring month in Sweden. It gets colder and colder and darker and darker. So it's a combination of worst time in Sweden and best time in Okinawa.
Yeah.
But it's still happening a lot of things. Everything from Bunka no Hi on the 3rd of November.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't been there, it's a great opportunity if you're going to visit the seminar anyway to catch the Bunka no Hi as well.
Yeah, culture day.
If people come for the karate day, and stay over, they manage to catch both Bunka no Hi and an excellent seminar.
Absolutely. Also they have the Naha Matsuri as well. So there's another big festival in Naha, which is actually more of a sort of a local produce festival. I don't think we need to mention that there's a lot of Orion beer and awamori involved in that, but lots of other good stuff too.
I have no clue.
But yeah, overall, it's a great time to be here.
Yeah.
Hey, Toshi-san, Aisatsu shimasu ka?
So,
Toshi
and his
here.
questions. Hey. Any questions?
これからまた練習するんですけど、元気ですか？
はい、そうですね。はい。もちろん楽しそう。
話まとまりました。何月に？
何月
？11月。
11月、そう、11月3日から1月。
年越しですね。
1月な。キープまだ勝てない、そしてわからないけど、1月真ん中ぐらい。はい、バイバイ。
Tanoshimi desu ne. Okay, thank you. Fantastic. Okay, well, this has been great. Thank you very much for taking time to join us on the AMA today, Ulf Sensei. And I think this is a great way to let people know about what's happening at the end of the year. We're going to follow up. While you were here the last time, we actually did a few videos together, little bits of snippet, tasters of Kishimoto-Di, and also the history side as well. So over the next few weeks, we'll be releasing a few smaller videos which give a taste of the style, the technique, but also some of the history that's related to that. So hopefully
and of course,
you enjoy that.
We talk a lot of the techniques now, but of course, if people are interested in history and so on, we will touch upon that as well during this time here. And that's also one of the things I researched while I'm on Okinawa. Yeah. Because there's a lot of speculation. So the hardest part is actually to weed out, to get it as close to the truth as possible. So the research continues, and there is still material to be found. I mean, both like they're still finding articles that talks about exhibitions on Okinawa. So we, for instance, know what kind of kata did they show, which people, and when. So there will come in the coming years, there will be published, I think, a lot of, it's not new material, but it's new in English at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we're still living in good times, and there might never been better chance to learn Okinawan karate with people who can translate. I don't. I don't say it is. I suppose. I mean, 50, 100 years ago, we would be different. So.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great time. So yeah, we're going to do our best to open up this opportunity to everybody that's interested to come over and take part.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you for this opportunity, and see you in November.
Thank you. Beautiful sunny day where you are. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoy that. We are going to finish there. Thank you. And come back online in about half an hour to start our seminar. If people are interested to join our seminar, then you can get the access details from the asatodojo.com website. If you go there, I think on the left-hand side, there's a link that says Chatanyara Kushanku Seminar. Click there, go through. Your access will be via Zoom. Okay? So it's register on Zoom and you can come in. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And take care, everybody. We'll see you online soon. Bye-bye.